Hey everyone, Anders Sundquist here, host of the Lean In podcast. And today I have my friend Moses Sison with me, excited to unpack some recruiting trends as it comes to the physical world. What I mean is, he's building the talent team at Ford. And as an alumni of Adobe, Google, Unity, and other shops, he has a firsthand position on the talent density approach to recruiting teams. But recruiting teams of engineers that build physical products has a special flair to it. So we're going to unpack that today. You'll probably hear some buzzwords like AI and scaling and other things. So take notes if you're tuning in. But Moses, thanks for joining the show, man.
Yeah, happy to be here. Glad we're
Yeah, so
finally doing this.
I know, a long time coming. So fill in the audience today on a bit about yourself, how you got into the role of director
Sure.
of recruiting at Ford. Was it your major in university or?
I don't know if any recruiter actually wanted to ever be a recruiter
Right.
when they were growing up. I stumbled into recruiting like most of us did after graduating with a marketing degree. I outsourced my job search. I went to many different agencies,
Sure.
from Echo to Manpower to Kelly Services to Insight Global to all of these. And then Adecco actually said, we don't have a marketing role for you, but do you want to come work here instead? And that's
Right.
where my recruiting career started. And from that point on, from Adecco working at the Google Print project. I don't know if any of you guys will remember that. They were taking pictures of every single book, and the hope is to digitize everything and anything.
Right.
Hired for that, ended up working at Google at some point, worked at Adobe University Recruiting, Silver Springs Network on the energy side, Dialpad on the voice over IP side. So lots of different industries. And then ultimately in automotive here at Ford.
Yeah. Wow. And we were just talking, and I know that much of this is still behind the curtain, but there's some exciting things around the corner that Ford is building, and I'll let you introduce that in a second. But why don't you set the stage for the listeners today about your recruiting team? So fill us in. Size and scope. How big are you, and what are you building?
So I specifically focus on the advanced EV team here in Long Beach, California, Palo Alto, and several folks in Detroit, Dearborn, Michigan. And we are in charge of revolutionizing the electric vehicle offering here at Ford. So
Right.
by the end of this year, I think we're going to be unveiling the product that my team has been working on for the past 3, 4 years now.
Wow.
When I joined, we only had about 30 people, and then my recruiting team, along with some acquisitions here and there, has built it up to about 800 folks now, and it's from the ground up. It's from the batteries. We hired different battery engineers. I mean, I hired a person, his second week, he was pouring chemicals into a battery cell, right? And, our global supply chain folks are looking for different glass manufacturers. I mean, this is
Wow.
really from the bottoms up approach. Even the software that we're going to be using is made internal, 100% in house. So it's really exciting to be able to hire a team, hire the people, and eventually drive a car that we've been working on.
Yeah, a tangible thing. You helped build the team that built the thing. I have to imagine that that feels different perhaps than, just another SaaS app or mobile app or what have you. Tell us, so you just talked about some really interesting roles that are outside like traditional software engineering, for like a tech recruiting leader to be building. How explain the different recruiting strategies that you need to employ when building something under this, it's like this American dynamism push has led a lot of investment to building things like cars domestically, rockets domestically, defense tech domestically. From a VC perspective, we're seeing a lot of this. There's definitely an increase in job postings for recruiters with this skill set. Tell us how it differs from building teams of purely software engineers.
It, they are the search is very similar, but it is such a smaller group, more tight knit community that tends to
Yeah.
know everybody. So, for example, seating, that is a niche role. They are
Yeah.
seating engineers. I did not as a seating engineer,
Yep.
right? And they all know each other because
Yeah.
how many seating engineers? I think we have 4 or 5 folks here, but they know the folks at Rivian who are also seating engineers. There's not
Right.
many of them. The battery folks, there's only a handful of those types of people. There's a
Right.
guy that we just hired from Rivian. He used to work for Jaguar. He's a craftsmanship manager. Didn't know what that is, but there's only a handful of those folks. So it's more targeted. It's more
Yeah.
intentional, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just more of a, instead of a shotgun approach, more of a sniper
Yeah.
rifle type of thing. Like, hey, we
Yeah.
need that one person that can only do this. We recently just hired a person who was credited for near field communication. So
Totally.
if anybody drives a car or drives a Tesla here, use your phone, but you have to have the app open.
Open at all time. Yeah, I can confirm. Interesting.
We
Yeah.
might wanna not have the app open. Is there a way for your phone to essentially be a real key that you don't
Yeah.
have the app open, but it's embedded somewhere in your firmware that it is a key, and when you get closer to your car,
Sure.
it turns on. It senses it much like a real key. So we ended up hiring a person that's credited for that technology, so lots of really interesting stuff.
Yeah, yeah, you're bringing back actually some nostalgic, long forgotten memories. 10 years ago, I did some work for a company that since was sold and then shuttered the doors, Zevo, if anyone remembers, they were in Seattle area, and they sold to Lear. I didn't know Lear, based in Detroit, and it turns out they're one of the largest auto manufacturing parts for seats. And so hiring the leather technicians and these
Right?
kinds of things was a brief project. This is a decade ago, but I remember thinking, "Oh, it's interesting," and it was more difficult than it looked because, yes, the TAM was smaller. And so you're building these teams with diverse skill sets and learning about these niche communities. So this kind of naturally, the inner recruiter in me, I get excited about this. It sounds
Yeah.
like a fun challenge, and when we've chatted, we've shared that enthusiasm. And so, I wanted to start with talking about the tools, the infrastructure, the processes that you employ at Ford. Just full stop, what do you employ to be so successful building the team that builds the car? But how is it different, or how has it evolved from years past? This might include the AI buzzword here, but more holistically, if you're recruiting for niche communities, is there a different philosophy and approach that you bring to your team?
It's not necessarily super different. It's not a 180 shift from what I normally would do in a software company. So my team, one of the main values that I implore, that I try to push out is curiosity, right? I want to make sure that they're actually curious about the technologies that they're working on. So, I would align one of my recruiters who's very interested in fashion, and it just happened to align her with the global supply chain manager who's in charge of the leather seats, and that person that she ended up hiring actually has a fashion degree,
Oh,
and
that's
but
so
she
cool. Yeah,
it is extremely cool. She's part of the textile global supply chain management team.
yeah.
So she's able to use her undergrad, but in a very different capacity. So I
Wow.
think what I've always done, and I'm still doing here, is aligning the interests of the recruiter to the roles and to the hiring managers that they're working with.
Right, right.
And you mentioned AI. We can't not talk about AI
Here we
in
go.
recruiting.
Right, right.
But so that's a difference in what I've used to do in the past, because before, there was no AI, we would do manual Boolean searching. So
Oh,
now
yeah.
with AI, it fills the top of the funnel quite a bit faster than manual sourcing. And it helps us with keywords. It's almost like having someone with you that you'll be able to brainstorm. I think that's the key mindset that people needs to have on with AI. It's not going to do the work for you. It's a coworker that can help you brainstorm
Yeah.
whatever ideas you may have. And it's working well.
What so say let's definitely dive in more to this. As I'm talking with different talent leaders, it's like there's different strategies for using AI. I think first let's define what AI is to Moses and the team at Ford. Meaning, are we talking an LLM that you have some infrastructure set up, like whether it's ChatGPT or Claude Anthropic or Gemini? And then above and beyond that, are there certain tools that you're finding success with that automate certain parts of the process? So let's kind of go down that rabbit hole because this is a whole new world.
I really like how progressive and how much Ford itself as a company, as a whole, is
Sure.
pushing an AI initiative. They're telling us, hey, use this to be more efficient. Use
Sure.
this so that you can get more work done. And what it means, and so Ford actually enables us or pays for ChatGPT, the latest and greatest version of that.
Yes.
Gemini. I think we have DeepSeek as well. We have Claude for coding. I don't usually use Claude all that much, but we
Sure.
also have Microsoft Copilot. So we're definitely equipped to be able to use all this. And my team uses it very differently than I would. So I would use it to brainstorm insights from data that I'm pulling.
Yeah.
I would use it to help me create PowerPoint presentations using Copilot. It actually does a pretty good job. The full version, paid version, it does a great
Yeah.
job. But my team would use it to fill the top of the funnel,
Yeah.
to come up with different titles for that role that they're working on, right?
Yeah.
I mean, typically you and I would go up to the hiring manager, hey, what are the other titles that we would use that you've seen in the past? We
Yeah.
don't need that anymore. You can use AI, right?
Oh, yeah. And it saves a lot of time. Yes.
Right. Or, hey, upload the job description. Does this look right for the title that I'm using? Hey,
Yep.
what other companies would employ this type of? So it's that researching piece. Before we would
Yes.
have to go to LinkedIn Insights. Can still
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
first draft is now having more of a conversation with
Yeah.
Gemini Pro
Yeah.
and balancing these ideas and, hey, help me come up with knockout questions
Yeah.
as a recruiter when doing a recruiter phone screen for this role. So now you
Yeah.
have a few questions to ask outside of, do you have unrestricted rights to work for any company in the United States, right? Like, do you
Yeah.
have any of those basic questions?
Yeah. Interview templating. No, sure. I mean, my mind's just rifling off different ways we use AI, or I hear other customers use AI. And for the audience tuning in, I do want to say just, and this is just an opinion, but if you're feeling lost in what Moses is saying and don't know where to start, in my opinion, one of the best places is just starting. Just create that account and start to use your LLM of choice, and they all have different trade-offs, like it's an assistant and like it's the smartest person in the room that you can talk to at all times. It's a great place to start, and maybe even sharing with it your role and asking, how can you help me save time? How can you help me increase efficiency? And watch what it does. And just to extend on some of the things that you described, this is using the LLM side of things, by the way. So I like Claude, but ChatGPT, Claude has projects and ChatGPT has a slightly different language and framework, but the same, but different, as they say.
Yeah.
But it's awesome to just like being able to take an intake call with a stakeholder, whether it's a hiring manager or a client, if you're on the vendor side, and being able to record that. Oh, beautiful. Now we have a transcript, and you can load the transcript into your LLM and ask the transcript what it infers, and then have that conversation to then write your job description and then give you that sourcing strategy. And it's like the smartest person in the room, and you're using it as a talent advisor, bouncing ideas back and forth. I love that approach. Like you said, where in the old days we used to maybe jump right into our limited knowledge that we have with a Boolean search that, again, is limited in its constraints. And so it really has just opened the floodgates to empower talent teams, I think, to move more quickly and do more, but definitely not replace them. Curious. So it sounds like there's this leveraging of AI from the LLM side. Are there like automation type AI tools or areas of the funnel that you've seen automated that are helpful, or that you hope to in the future as they get safer, maybe? Dot dot dot.
No, absolutely. So what you mentioned and what we're now talking about is the first layer of AI.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
how you break into it. This is how you get people to start using it, right? Because it's a normal type. You're just typing, you're not really coding, you're kind of bouncing ideas, you're
Yeah.
reading, you're
Yeah.
getting insights. This is just a very easy way. The next evolution of that, which some of my team members have actually gone to the next level, is creating your own agents, right?
Totally. Now we're talking.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So now, I mean, we're getting to the kind of the next level of it. Is now they're creating agents that will source for them and give them the top 5 qualified candidates that the AI thinks based on your prompts every morning.
Yep.
So it's helped them because you now have a starting.
Yeah.
Sometimes people get paralyzed with green fields. People always say,
Yeah.
oh, blue skies, green fields. Some people love it. Some people have no idea how to start.
Yeah.
But this, having an agent work for you, now you're able to
Yeah.
have, 5 people, maybe great, maybe not great, but you
Yeah.
have something to get you started.
Something to start with. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then sometimes the other pieces is we're empowering hiring managers because for every hire here, they have to do a write up. Hey, I
Sure.
want to hire this person. Here's the feedback from, just a regular write up to their manager so that they can get buy in. We have created an agent to help with those write up because hiring managers are busy. They don't
Yes.
want it's hard. They're not authors, right?
Yeah.
They want to write these write ups that even though it's a priority for them.
Yeah.
So why not use AI and
Yeah.
just give them prompts? Hey, you're
Yeah.
ready for your roll up? Tell me about this. Tell me about that. Now they're just inputting information, and
Yeah.
at the end it would have this nice formatted using the templates that we have. And all they have to
Right.
do is copy paste in email and send it out.
Yeah.
So it's not only helping the recruiters get started, it's also helping the hiring managers, which will ultimately lower our average time to hire
Totally.
because we're
Yeah.
no longer waiting a week for X manager because they just don't have the time. Now they're doing it a lot faster.
So question, this is just off the cuff question, but
Yeah.
and I think we've touched on this, but I love to learn this, and just an estimation, a finger in the wind, or I don't know, is fine too. But when AI is relatively new, I think we can all agree maybe implementation like in the workplace and full adoption. I would say we're
Sure.
still adopting, you know, and that's fair. That's okay too. But if you had to estimate like improvement, say from a year ago or 2 years ago or pre AI to present day, the velocity, like the time to fill improvement, offer accepted improvement, like any material improvement. I'm just genuinely curious, like your personal opinions, in or outside of Ford, just what you hear in the
Sure.
industry, if you're able to share Ford's. But then also the second part of this question is I'm starting to hear a lot about cost and how this was subsidized early on by the labs of choice, and no shade on them, and made sense. We all got used to this subsidized adoption. But then are you seeing cost increase such that it's unsustainable compared to production increase? So two-part question: what have you noticed for material gains in speed and volume, and then what are you observing with cost as it relates to this token era we're in?
So in terms of the cost, I am lucky enough to not have to work to deal with that piece,
Fair.
right? So don't know. I mean, I'm sure it does cost some money to have all these AI tools available to us.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'm glad that Ford is fronting the bill for that.
Yeah.
On the improvement side of things, I think there's two aspects that it's actually really improving.
Okay.
One, it's the time to hire. So time to fill, the way I define it is when the rec is open and the rec is closed. That's the fill time. That's has to do with the rec. I
Yeah.
like to actually measure time to hire, which has to do more with the candidate. The moment a candidate enters your applicant tracking system to the moment they sign, because that is within the scope, my scope of actually I
The
can change.
controllables.
Like, that's
Sure.
controllable, right? Like you can actually understand how fast your funnel is because now you have a candidate. You're not
Yeah.
looking anymore. You
Yeah.
have a candidate. How long does it take for them to run through the entire process to
Yeah.
get a hire? That's helping there because again, that roll up AI, that summary is helping them write it. In terms of negotiations, I mean, if there's a recruiter that isn't sure about what kind of objections a candidate might have, they
Yeah.
can run it by the
Yeah.
AI team or the AI, whatever they choose, and
Yeah.
it'll help them with objection handling
Yeah.
techniques. Before I had to go to, I love like Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. I read a lot of negotiations
My
books.
bookshelf. Yeah.
Oh, there
Yeah.
you go. It's fantastic.
Agreed.
But now you can just go to Claude, enter the specific situation,
Yeah.
and then it'll tell you kind of, hey,
Yeah.
these are some of the things that you should point out.
Yeah.
This from your interaction with the candidate, this
Yeah.
seems to be more important, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So again, I treat AI as like a coworker that is always available for me to just discuss topics and discuss like bounce ideas off of.
So if you're tuning in, I mean, Moses, you just said a few really important things, really dense set of topics, and it's a great segue to our next set of topics. But wanted to highlight, look at time to hire. What I'm hearing you describe is TA teams can control this. Perhaps that's the better ratio to be measuring, and in doing so, measure present day AI adoption and look back 2, 3 years ago, pre-adoption, and see the improvements, see the velocity. And that might be a case to maybe invest more in AI or divest into another tool. Maybe you'll see there's a gap in the funnel. Oh, we really need better scheduling or conversions and reduce dwell time from RPS through whatever stage, or
Right.
OE, offer extend to offer accept. And you'll be able to analyze that better.
The
So go
the
ahead.
one thing the one thing that I do want to point out in terms of adoption, it's hard to measure adoption of something that keeps changing.
True.
Like, how do you say we're at 50% adoption
Yeah.
based on the version of the AI you're using from a year ago? But now there's so many more functionalities, there's so many
Yeah.
more ability of what it can do.
Yeah.
So whatever you adopted is now only 10% of the capacity of what you're actually able to do. So you're always constantly adopting this new technology that is moving at the speed of light, right?
Yeah, I would agree. In fact, if you're new to model management, I
Sure.
will use certain models, maybe the latest one, for a more complex task, right? Something that involves a series of steps, and maybe it is agentic. Maybe it's actually revising a contract and helping with a complex set of negotiations, whatever that might be. Something more simple. And I have a lot of just simple questions I'll ask day to day about what my kid's sick symptoms are, right?
Yeah,
Maybe
right.
use the lighter model for that. It has less token cost to it as well. And if that doesn't make sense to you, ask your AI what that means. But there's certainly a cost difference, and we're at the all you can eat AI buffet. I think is ending, as some of us may have seen on social media. Costs are increasing, and that's one of the fears here. I've seen. Oh, there's a story. You'll have to fact check me, audience, but I think Uber blew through their whole AI budget by like the end of May. Forgive me if I'm off by a couple weeks, but it's like blowing through a whole annual budget early. What does that mean? And what have other teams done in terms of unmanaged spend? And how will AI cost increase as as energy costs increase? So I don't know that answer, but I wanted to come back to something that you touched on in the segue around, using AI and the competitive roles in a market. And so, some of the roles that Ford is recruiting on, you mentioned let's take like the seat engineer, or, some of those nuanced roles you talked about, or maybe some of the roles around the AI, ML, data science space that we know are just in high demand right now with almost every tech company. It's likely that Ford is in these multi offer scenarios and having to attract and then close that talent. How has that attraction and storytelling and closing strategy evolved over the years? Whether AI has evolved it or not, now that everyone has AI in the palm of their hand, how has telling that story changed? Or is the human component, Zoom to Zoom or coffee to coffee conversations, still the most important thing? What's your personal opinion on this?
There's an old adage of people don't quit their jobs, they quit their managers. So if you take that and say people don't accept the jobs, they accept it for who they're going to be working with,
Yeah,
right? They accept the job based on the manager that they're reporting to, based on the
yeah.
team that they interviewed with. So you can never take away the human component of closing. You can never take away the human component of selling, of understanding, does this person have the speed, agility to work in a California based startup skunkworks, but also have the patience of dealing with, a 100-year-old infrastructure that is
Oh,
Ford.
yeah, that's
How do
fair.
how you nothing, there's no
Oh,
assessment tool that can assess those two pieces
yeah.
at all. It has to be done by the hiring manager. It has to be done by the recruiter. So in that sense, I mean, the people are still very much involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
If so, well, I think you bring up a good point. I agree, and I'm finding, if anything, in this hyper competitive market, and it is hyper competitive, although there are still mass layoffs happening, and it's a tough time for many out there that are actively seeking. The open roles often still have multi offer scenarios, and there's a hyper competitive on site approach to recruiting, especially for
yeah,
what Ford's doing on with what I would assume are small TAM hybrid on-site roles, TAM total addressable market, right? And so for me, when we're in those scenarios, working with the customer, and there's this high demand, high competition, it's almost like the old tricks in the book for closing are just as important. They're just slightly empowered by AI. Like what I mean is, like, now you can go into a prep closing call. And so maybe that closing call, the setting up the closing call with the hiring manager, maybe bringing them back on site, right? To have them see the factory floor, or talk to the team and do the lunch and all these things, right? And explain the story and the impact that they'll have. It's like the AI now helps us understand the candidate better than ever, because we can look for those signals, those hidden signals, maybe that we didn't see and didn't get from the initial calls, right? And now, for many of us, our notes aren't just handwritten. Maybe they're recorded, transcribed, and ingested in the ATS. We can search them now. Maybe we can paste that transcript into our LLM and say, hey, help me with the closing strategy. What did I miss about this candidate? What preferences might they have? And it will help me and my teams see those hidden signals. But I'm curious, when you're in these like competitive multi-offer scenarios, what has changed, or how are you using AI now for closing?
Well, if you pretend you and I are coworkers and I have a close, and before I might go to you and say, Anders, can we just have a quick conversation on this? Let me run through the offer. Let me run
Sure.
through the situation, and we would just chat.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now with AI, you can do the exact same thing, but your coworker is now Gemini Pro, right? And you have more data points, like you said. But
Yeah.
ultimately, you are doing the exact same thing as if you were in the office with someone else that's
Yeah.
also doing the same job,
Yeah.
and you're using them as a sounding board to
Yeah.
pull out objections, pull out, okay, where is that? Where is am I using a carrot? Am I using a stick?
Yeah.
Am I pinpointing, the compensation piece? Am I going and saying, hey, work life balance? Like, this is a conversation between humans before, but
Yeah.
now you also have AI, and you're using that to
Yeah.
kind of bounce ideas off of each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. A question just popped in my head. You have you've been in talent acquisition and early stage at large tech companies now, you mentioned the Google, many years ago, Adobe and Unity. How does the present day, June 2026 tech hiring market feel to you, to Moses, compared to those hyper growth eras? And when you were at, multi-year stint at Unity, when Unity was, at its prime, and Google in the early days, like, how does it feel? Is it more competitive? Is it just a different flavor? Like, how does it feel?
I feel like there's a lot more landmines now.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm playing Minesweeper, and before I was playing Duck Hunt, right? Like, very different way. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Boom,
Yeah.
you see that person, you see that candidate flying through,
Yeah.
and you wanna
Yeah.
try to
Yeah.
catch them. But now with AI, with agentic, with the ability to apply to many multiple roles all at the same time with the snap of or click of a button,
Yep.
you're now playing Minesweeper. You're clicking because now there's just so many. You want to understand, okay, who's the real person here? Who can actually do the job? When you're interviewing someone, who's using AI to
Wow.
record what I'm saying and then
Yeah.
responding? They're not really even responding with their thoughts. They're responding with what AI told them. So I get it. I'm a big gamer. I've always been. I loved my time at Unity, and I still do as much as I can. Try to play some games. I have a son, but so that takes a lot of my time. But that's how I would kind of say propose it,
Wow.
right? More of the first.
Yeah.
It was a very duck hunt type of
Y
game.
yeah.
Now it's more Minesweeper
That's a
in every stage of the process, from candidate selection to the offer process. You're playing Minesweeper.
totally. It makes me think of, like, early day one of my I used to play Doom on PC as
There
super
you go.
first person shooter, and then, now the most I've lost touch after having kids too, but first person shooters have evolved in complexity for sure, and then whatever the modern Black Ops is and how complex that is, and the maps and everything. That's a good analogy.
If you
I
think
don't know.
about it, for the folks that are a bit older, if you guys remember Mad Magazine, they had a Mad TV show, Mad Magazine. There was a bit there called Spy versus Spy,
Yeah.
and I feel like people are using AI, that you're
Yep.
using AI versus AI at this point,
Oh,
right?
yeah. It's like the game theory. If it's like, if since they're using it, we have to use it. And like, if you're negotiating, the candidate's using their LLM, we have to use our LLM. It's like, so it's almost like, yes, there's this brokering happen,
Right?
LLM versus LLM, and it's here to stay. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. And especially, I really want to make sure I touch on something. You brought this up. It wasn't even something we were going to bring up today, but
Sure.
we must address now. I guess it's the F word, fraud,
Yeah.
because it's here, it's happening, different flavors, but it sounds like you're experiencing it firsthand. Maybe cheating is a flavor of fraud, and there's frauds everywhere. It feels like it's more prevalent than ever, both with offshore bad actors, which is scary and complex, that are interviewing for tech roles, but then candidates that are maybe embellishing or using AI to answer for them. This has all happened so quickly. There's no best practices, right? Like how do we protect ourselves? So how do you protect your recruiting team at Ford? How do you teach them to watch for fakers or frauds? What's the workflow there?
So this is where having someone who is a curious recruiter when
Yeah,
interviewing someone really pays off
yeah,
because AI can only take you so much and can only take you so far.
yeah,
But when you start asking behavioral questions, meaning tell me about a time, AI can't tell you about a time because they don't know your entire history, right? It's
right.
not like you upload your resume and say, okay, this is me. But tell me about a time where you worked on a project at Unity.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, you didn't tell that AI bot all the projects that you've worked on in the past.
That's when the big pause happens.
That's a
10
massive pause of
10-second silence.
that's
Excuse
right.
me. Did you
You
hear
know
me?
what
Yeah,
asking me that? Well, that's a great question. Would you mind ask? And there's a lot of stall tactics at
yeah,
the end, but then AI will give you a very high level
yeah,
answer to that. Then you dig in. Great.
yeah,
How many people was in that team? That
yeah,
now they're guessing. Now they don't know how many people is in that team. What was the
yeah,
percentage of code did you actually contribute to that project?
yeah.
How many times did you have to QA it? How's the QA team? Is it just a kind of toss it over the fence? Is it more of a what's a collaborative type of QA
Right.
environment, right? You ask specifically about a job, about a project, about a
Yeah,
person,
yeah,
about the code. The more layers the deeper you get, the
yeah.
less AI becomes helpful,
Yeah, yeah. You're bringing up. I think if you're tuning in today, regardless what your organization's fraud prevention programs are, the interview rubric and script is more important than ever.
right?
Asking these specific questions, and I've even heard some creative ones. Things like early on, depending on being aware and being curious are like personal traits to have and to really use those in the interview, but watching for those signals. Of course, the simple signals like number of LinkedIn connections, when was the page made, how's the background look compared to the supposed IP address, asking about, resume address or location, and asking about. So, a fun one I've heard, for example, is taking a location, maybe using Google Maps, taking a location they claim to have been at and a restaurant or a cross street nearby, right? And asking about that because they would have seen said restaurant or they would have known that cross street and catching them early on. And again, this is the era we're in, right? Because you have to protect yourself and your organization. And so if you suspect that, don't be afraid to screen out rather than waste their and your time. Also, there's tooling out there. We're hosting the founder of Tofu soon, which I've heard is a great fraud prevention tool, a bolt-on. We're gonna so tune into that episode, audience, once we post that later this summer, because there are bolt-ons in addition to behavioral practices or AI tooling that you can use to prevent your or to protect yourselves. So
What's also interesting when it comes to fraud is that I think, let's say 10 years ago, several years ago, there was a mindset of making it easy for candidates to apply, right?
right,
Let the recruiters be the gatekeeper. Don't, make the job description a bit more generic so
yeah,
that people are not self-selecting out. Don't have knockout questions. Just make it easy for them so that now you
frictionless.
file
Yeah,
get exactly, just one click apply on LinkedIn,
yeah,
that kind of stuff, right? Easy,
yeah,
super easy. But I
yeah,
think there's a mindset. The mindset is changing now. The
yeah,
mindset is making it harder for someone to actually get to the applicant system by having all these gates because it really starts to weed out folks
yeah,
who are not too interested. Two are
yeah,
using bots that isn't complex enough to navigate through all the gates, right?
yeah.
And then at the end, you get the person that is probably a person because they went through all of these different steps. Now,
Right.
it might dissuade the person who's super highly qualified. It's like, I don't need to actually apply to this role. This is too much. But if they are really interested, then they'll go through the process.
Than the right people. Interesting. So that's sort of an optimization to the structure for an applicant or for a candidate, really from early funnel, whether it is applicant, source, referred, agency. And it kind of begs the question, how has so at Ford, or in just in your personal opinion, how has TA team and the levers you pull structure changed from the pre-AI era? So what I mean is, like, before, how would you structure with sourcers, coordinators, recruiters, and then let's call it contractors agency? And now how does it look different and why in this
Well,
AI era?
we use quite a bit more of knockout questions now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Use rankings, and so we have Eightfold on top of our ORC, of the Oracle applicant tracking system.
Got it. Got it.
And Eightfold, if you calibrate it correctly, does a decent job ranking your candidates, right? So it understands, okay, the job description, it understands what you feed it, it understands the company, et cetera, et cetera. So before AI, I was very skeptical of these ranking systems. Actually, I not skeptical. I just if I downright didn't believe in any of
Just
them.
didn't use it. Right.
I
Right.
just didn't use them at all. Not at all, right?
Yeah.
But now I'm actually confident if someone gets a 0 star or a 1 star in a very calibrated rec in Eightfold, that person's probably not qualified for this job,
Right.
right? That's a different mindset than I had 10 years ago, where I just didn't use it. I didn't
Yeah.
care. Greenhouse said that this person matched X
Yeah.
job description. I would still look at it. But now
Right.
I'm comfortable enough to say, nope, I'm probably going to go ahead and decline.
So that totally changes the job of a sourcer who's filtering and stack ranking, right? Because the AI is helping expedite that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The sourcers have become, having a person call someone directly is actually a competitive advantage these days. Like,
Yeah. Isn't that
I
funny? That's full circle from the agency days when you had Adecco, or I was at
that's
Aerotech.
right.
And that's a
That's
best practice. It's pick up the phone. For a while, it was kind of thought of as, too aggressive, or maybe not something that was standard. And I'm hearing TA teams, of course, back in, the vendors, agencies, embedded teams are redeploying that. And now AI can help how you do that. But it's
right.
interesting that we've come full circle.
And funny enough, sometimes typos and mistakes and grammatical errors are
Yeah.
seen as like, oh, this person is actually a person because
It's
it's
a,
their emails is not perfect. It's like
right.
I will respond to this because someone took the time to write it and made a mistake as they type, you know?
So make typos for
Yeah.
sure. That is
You're
funny.
less There's a higher chance of you not being an AI if there's a typo in your message.
And so in the AI era, a question around, tooling, like, where are you investing dollars, and where do you think TA teams should invest dollars for budget across, so if there's this pre-AI, I think that, contingent recruiting firms, it were an easy lever to pull, embedded recruiting as well. How has that changed? Or just staff augmentation, and that might fall under the budget of the Eng team or whatever org it is. But how has that changed, using retained search firms for tough roles, using contingent search firms to plug a hole, staff augmentation with contractors, and then maybe investing in sourcing tools, bolting on Juicebox or whatever it might be. How has that changed in the AI era?
So, big question. But so, in terms of just agency wise, contingent firms, they're always very useful for one offs, for projects,
Right.
for niche roles, or for a massive wave of headcount that you weren't expecting. That's not going to
Research. Yeah.
that's going to be it's not going to be sustainable. So you don't
Yeah.
want to grow your team all of a sudden. So you always want to have a few agencies that you work with that you can trust, that this is their job. They look for people, and they always have the capacity to help you. So hasn't changed too much, in my opinion. What I'm seeing change is on the scheduling coordination side of things,
Yeah.
right? Instead of having, an army of coordinators for a massive company, that army is shrinking
Yep.
because, for example, Ashby rolled out an AI scheduler, and I know a company that laid off their entire recruiting coordination team, and then now is just relying on the recruiter and the tool to coordinate on-site interviews. I'm not a fan of that model, by the way, but I think that was kind of a little too fast, too soon.
Yeah.
Just because other companies have promised that
Yeah.
same automation. Oh, you don't need to do this, you don't need to do that. But then next thing you know, no one's there to greet your candidate because great,
Right.
we're able to schedule it, but who's the actual person? Calendars, you don't have an RC who has a relationship with the hiring manager who can tell them to move their one-on-ones because I need that spot, right?
Yeah.
That's gone too. So that's a big change that I see a lot of companies are adopting. because they're so bought into AI
Yeah.
that they're starting to believe all of these different promises. So I think you still have to come at AI with a skeptical mind. Don't just believe everything that you
Yeah.
hear.
A phrase popped in my head. If you're tuning in today looking for the one size fits all silver bullet, I'm yet to find it. And
Yep.
I think that it does not exist, nor do I think it will. Sure, there's dramatic efficiency gains with, creative AI ecosystems that you build, and listen to some previous episodes for how to build those, and to what Moses said earlier. But I'll say, and I work with some of the top AI companies out there on site in the Bay, and there is still a massive demand, even for pure sourcer roles, because now that everyone has an agentic sourcing tool, and there's great tools out there, sometimes you come up across the following: the same candidates being resurfaced. Maybe after the first couple batches of candidates, it's the same candidates being recycled. Maybe the agent is not able to dig as deep. And what I mean by dig as deep is a human and a true talent, TAM building, market mapping sourcer is able to look in hidden channels, those Discord channels and those GitHub profiles. And I'm yet to see an agent totally solve for sourcing, because I think the signal is OpenAI and Anthropic are hiring sourcers. So
Right.
look no further than that, which is interesting. So, okay, we're at the part of the podcast, which is one of my favorites, the crystal ball question.
Yeah.
So let's look 5 years out, man. 5 years from now. So, 2031, and AI is evolving at an evolving rate, and whatever else happens in the macroeconomic climate, we don't know. But looking in that crystal ball, where will the tech and TA communities be?
That is that is a definitely a crystal ball question. I mean,
Yeah.
granted that the average tenure of an employee here in the valley is only 18 months. You're asking me all the way to 5 years, where
Yeah, yeah.
there's a
3 new
poss
jobs.
yeah, there's a possibility of the entire company might have turned over during that time
Yeah.
already. I think it's where we're going is a better recruiting will turn into more of a marketing and sales organization,
Yeah.
more so than it is now. So what I mean by that
Yeah.
is marketing and sales has always been equipped with the latest and greatest tools in terms of sourcing. They're sourcing companies, they're sourcing, and
Yeah.
also attraction,
Yeah.
marketing, right?
Yeah.
They're always given these tools where they can tell if you opened a rec, if you opened an email, they could have drip campaigns. And recruiting has always fallen the back and picked up the scraps of the sales tools, picked up the scraps of the marketing
Yeah.
tools.
Yeah.
5 years from now, I think recruiting will have talent acquisition, will have all of those tools and more. So we'll be more
Yeah.
equipped. We'll be able to sell and prospect as good as a
Yeah.
salesperson for the enterprise side. We'll be able to attract talent same way as a marketer. We're able to have a full blown CRM system on top of the applicant tracking system. So that's where I see recruiting going is really lev- is not just picking at the scraps of
Yeah.
the sales and marketing organization, but really becoming its own and
Yeah.
having tools to do both.
That's a great that's a great forecast. I agree. I've
Mm.
heard similar opinions before, and also that operation mindsets will be continually required in talent acquisition. We're already seeing that, I think. And then, so I have a forecast. I'm going to use a term. I think macroeconomic forecast is we're going to see like a parabola, where I think we'll continue to see layoffs for the same reason tech sometimes has short-term efficiency stock price boost decisions, and we're seeing this right now. So layoffs attributed to AI boosted stock prices across FANG and smaller companies. That's the downturn of the parabola. We're kind of already seeing that in terms of like demand and the labor market. I think shortly what happens, it might even be more of a steep U or V. I think I heard the NVIDIA CEO, sorry, Jensen forecast similar to radiology. There was a massive increase in the TAM of radiologists. People thought that the skill set would die because of AI, right? It's brilliant at looking at interpreting the images, but now there's more than ever because they are empowered to see more patients and spend time with patients. I think the same is true for many of these jobs in the white collar space. And so I think that overall, and about 5, 6, 7, 10 years is when we'll see this, is the GDP, the output overall will be dramatically higher because efficiency gains will be realized. AI will get expensive. It will be throttled. Each role will have a salary and a token spend per role. I believe there will be an AI budget per role. And I think AI fluency will be required, just like Excel was, doing 10, 15, 20 years ago. So that's my forecast. I think that we're going to see like a slight downturn while there's still an upturn happening, which is happening now. The investment in AI and in American dynamism is huge. It's 5x the ZERP era. So there's investment is happening. It's just looking at where the efficiencies are being realized. So parabola increase in the labor market, some short-term pain, but long-term upside for all. That's my thoughts.
For what it's worth, sometimes the layoff that are attributed to AI is not. It should not be attributed to AI. They're just using AI is a scapegoat for
Oh yeah.
any everything right now. Any issue you have, any questions, anything that your
Yeah.
company does, you attribute it positive or negative to
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah. Well said. So maybe don't believe some of the news hype cycles that we see. It can still be a tough time for some. So I want to empathize with that. It's a new era and things are changing quickly. That's why we do this podcast. That's why I'm grateful you joined, Moses. You shared so much information today for the audience. Thanks for your time. I always love our chats. I learn a lot from you myself. So we appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in to the Lean In podcast, everyone.
Of
Have a good one.
course. By the way, just a quick plug, we will be unveiling the new Ford electric vehicle by the end of this year. So stay tuned for that. I've seen it. It's amazing. It's awesome.
I'm
So
excited to see it. When I heard you describe the little tidbits, it's really exciting stuff. And you're building the team that builds the car. So proud of what you and the Ford team have done. So look for the unveil, everyone, and give Moses a shout if you have questions directly. Thank you. Take care.
take care.